Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 762. My opponent started off with d4 and I went to d5, thinking to play a traditional queen's pawn opening after c4 or even knight f3, but instead my opponent surprises me with e4, which normally leads to the Blackmar-Diemer gambit. That's the most common way that it's played, although the way my opponent played this, we ended up in something called the Blackmar gambit, which was actually the original form of this gambit. So let's do a little little opening theory here for the Blackmar gambit. Normally you take here. I mean, he's giving you a free pawn in the center. Why not take it? And the original Blackmar gambit was this second choice here in the database, this f3 move. That's the way Blackmar played it. And well, this leads to some interesting play, although in most lines black is better. But it was discovered there's this one line after e5, which basically refutes the gambit. Black is so much better that white just declined to play this way anymore. And the problem after e4 is that if white takes, then black can just trade queens and then very conveniently round up this pawn. And so let's see, if black gets his pawn back, if white gets his pawn back, then black can grab that center pawn. And yeah, the material is even here, but white has a number of weaknesses. White has an isolated e-pawn, which is not so easy to defend, and white is not able to castle. He's lost castling privileges. So this is just a good position for black. So the white player started looking for alternatives. Here, let's just look at this from the opening book point of view. So after taking, so that was d4, d5, e4, d takes e4. After black takes, instead of playing f3 immediately, throw in this intermediate move, knight c3. This was Diemer's idea, so that's why it became called the Blackmar-Diemer gambit. And this just leads us to a slightly better version than what we saw before. Now after e5, if black continues to play this way, then white has the option of grabbing this pawn with a knight. And well, you can see that this leads to better development for white. That's probably what he's looking for. And this pawn can come under fire. This turns out to be a playable position for black as well, so that might be an interesting way to play it. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. In the normal line here for black to get the most advantage. Well, first of all, if you're faced with a Blackmar-Diemer gambit and you want to avoid the gambit entirely, you can play either c6 or e6 and transpose into lines of the Caro-Kann or the French defense, if you're familiar with those. But if you want to play the Blackmar-Diemer gambit and get the best position for black, knight f6 there, just defending the pawn, is the best move. And now the f3 idea comes into play. So that's just a little wrinkle there with Diemer came up with to bring the knight up before playing f3. And now there's different ways to play, including taking. That's actually, taking is the top engine choice, but then white does get some development and a little bit of play. I often go with this bishop f5 line. That's another way to play it, which gives some edge to black, but it's not really a refutation. It's a long and complicated game. So backing up to this position, I might try this e5 move in the future. I just looked at it for this game with the chess engine. Curious about what happened if you tried e5 in this position. And it led to a position which was about equal, but kind of open, and it looked like it was playable for both sides. So that might be a way to get a slightly non-standard position. It's not your typical Blackmar-Diemer position, and it's not strictly a transposing into a French defense or a Caro-Kann either. Anyway, let's go back to the game and we'll see something similar happening in the game. Let's see, I took, and then he didn't play f3, he didn't play knight to c3, he played this move, bishop to e3. And so just borrowing a line from the original Blackmar gambit, so when the knight's not on c3, you can't really take here. So you can just throw in this e5 move, and that's what I played. And in fact, this is a line in the Blackmar gambit. That was the other way that white had of playing, rather than taking immediately, was to develop the knight. And so after this move, f3, we've actually transposed into the Blackmar gambit. It's just as if he had played f3 first, I played e5, and then he played bishop to e3, which is, like I said, an alternative to just taking. But this leads to a decent, a good position for black. Black is actually better here. Not quite as it's not quite as strong an advantage as it was in the first line I showed you against the Blackmar, but it still leads to a pretty strong edge for black. So I took the pawn, which is correct. Takes back. And then I developed with knight f6. Apparently most accurate is knight to c6, gaining another tempo on that bishop. But I was concerned with getting my king out of the center. This also keeps an advantage to black. Let's see, he goes knight c3, go bishop e7, just preparing to take back the bishop with my bishop if he wants to exchange on f6, and also preparing to castle. Goes bishop c4. I went ahead and castled. But you see that white did get some easy development here. His only problem is he can't ever develop that knight, or can't conveniently develop that knight. I guess he could consider developing via some other avenue until he takes this pawn. So eventually he takes back, and material equality is restored, and there's this weakness on e4 that I can harass later in the game. Let's see. So anyway, I started out with bishop to g4 here. He goes knight f3, and I go knight c6. So I get all of my pieces out, and the knight on c6 still comes with tempo. He decided to trade at this point. He could have just retreated the bishop and kept all the material on. Well, the bishop is moving off from the d file anyway, I guess. So there's probably going to be some trades. You know, I can at least get a queen trade here. And I was thinking that this endgame was good for me because I have the bishop pair and I have a pawn weakness to go after. So that should be, you know, close to winning endgame. But actually the chess engine prefers keeping the queens on, just taking back and playing the middle game with the queens on and keeping the bishop pair advantage. Say white might castle here, and then I could play knight to d4 or bishop takes were both suggestions of the chess engine at that point. Anyway, I took queens off. This keeps an advantage, but maybe not quite as big an advantage as I had earlier. He takes, and I went to bishop takes f6. Had to get my piece back, and you know, that's a good post for the bishop, looking across the center at a potential target on c3. He castled here, and you know, I didn't want to give up the bishop pair just in exchange for doubling his pawns over here, although that's certainly something you could consider. Went with knight to e5 here. Yeah, what I was looking at was driving his pieces back, taking advantage of the pin on that knight, and that forces this move bishop to e2. And then I went for the exchanges at this point, but I actually miscalculated. I was thinking somehow that I would end up with two weaknesses. I'd go to an endgame where he had a weak pawn here and doubled pawns over here. I was sort of forgetting that after I take, he's going to take back with the rook, and that defends this knight on c3. So I could consider taking on c3 at this point. And then going for this endgame where he's got two weaknesses. He's got this weakness and the doubled pawns over here. And that's probably a winning endgame. Anyway, the chess engine likes that, but it likes just the simple retreat, bishop to e6, even more. It just wants to keep both bishops on the board and just play from this position. But, well, anyway, in a blitz game, sometimes it helps to simplify. But I simplified a little too much. I think I gave him some drawing chances here. So after bishop takes, he took with the rook, and I realized I'm not going to gain anything by taking over here. So at this point I played rook f to e8. But let's see, the chess engine likes the move c6 here. You know, just first restricting his knight. Let's see, it gives rook e3 as the move for white, maybe thinking to push that pawn forward, and then rook f e8. And this keeps an advantage for black. But after the way I played it, rook f e8, chess engine says that he has a chance to equalize with the move rook to d7. just activating his rook. His king is not in any danger of being checkmated on the back rank, whereas mine is. I have to be a little bit careful here. And he's, looking at the C pawn here and the B pawn beyond it. So play rook e7, and the engine rates this as about even. So this was White's one chance to kind of equalize in the game. I think I pretty much have an edge the rest of the way. But he was moving pretty quickly the whole game. So he just went knight d5 here. Although I have to admit, knight d5 is a very tempting move. If you had to choose between those two. I mean, it's hitting the bishop, it's hitting the pawn. Took me a second to find the only move here, which is bishop to e5. Gets the bishop out of trouble and defends the c pawn. So I sort of hold on because of that. Let's see, he goes c3 here. I mean, there was a danger I would chase the knight away and then start taking his queenside pawn, so he blunts my bishop that way. I kick his knight back and play bishop back to c7. So I'm keeping that edge, although it's not clear that it's a winning edge. You never know at this point in the endgame what amounts to a win and what doesn't. And there's some interesting stuff coming up. So he plays this rook d7 move now, and that's a good move. It's a double attack, and fortunately for me, I have this move bishop to b6, which is attacking his pinned knight. And so if he comes down here and grabs this pawn, I may win a whole piece there. Let's see. So he played king h1 first to unpin, and I grabbed the pawn, and then he just retreated his knight. So he unpinned so he could keep the knight on. And after that, I definitely have a winning advantage. But he had a chance here to really complicate things by taking this pawn. And he has to take with the right rook. If he takes with this rook, which is the only thing I was really thinking about during the game, it doesn't add up to much, and not enough compensation for the knight. I'll just grab the knight. But if he takes this way, I should grab the knight. I have not much else to no other way to defend this pawn, really. No way to defend this pawn. His knight is guarding this square, so my rook can't come over and defend the pawn from on top. So let's see, bishop, and the bishop can't get over and defend it either. So taking the knight is forced, and then he can take here. And to keep the game going, if I go to h8, then actually turns into a draw. I can just perpetual checkmate. But from here, now he has, if he grabs the pawn, I mate him, so he has to take a move out to play h4, and then I can bring this rook into the game with rook d8, which gives up another pawn over here, or over here you could take either one of those. But anyway, it's a complicated game from this point, and I don't get mated, and I have some slight edge according to the chess engine, but who knows how it would have ended. So that was another practical chance, I guess, that the chess engine points out at this point. And finally, after knight c2, then I really am winning. And because this goes on for a long time, I'll probably go through some of these moves kind of quickly. I started threatening to mate him on the back rank, and that kind of forced an exchange, or allowed me to exchange rooks. And then here, let's see, I went f6. There was a faster win here with the immediate rook e1 check. And I didn't think about this. I was worried more about making sure I didn't get checkmated and keeping my advantage, which I do. I do keep a winning advantage there. But after the check, and this check, he has to block with the pawn if he doesn't want to give up more material. And then I have this check, and I can grab another pawn and be 2 pawns up. So that'd be a quicker win for me. Let's see, I went f6 in this position though, and let's roll forward some more moves, get some maneuvering. I know I'm attacking his pawns and his pieces, and just trying to. Oh, and king e1 is a definite mistake. He's just giving up his pawns when he plays that way. And, if I have this, it's the pawns on the king side that actually I managed to queen. So these turn out to be my winning advantage over here. So he really shouldn't give those pawns up. He should, to put up the biggest fight, he should hold on to those pawns and maybe try and liquidate some pawns over here on the queen side. That was a4 was the suggested move by the chess engine. So king e1 makes the win a little bit easier for me. Let's roll forward some more. pick up a couple pawns. He wins a pawn, but I've got a 2-pawn edge here, and just have to watch out for those little tricks. He was threatening to play check here and then check here and win my bishop. So staying alert is important when you're winning. Also, taking it slow, as I mentioned, is sometimes the key in these endgames. See, he checked me anyway, and harassed my bishop. Let's see, go forward some more. He harasses my king here. And let's see, I went king h6 here. I wanted to get the king out of the way so I could move my pawns forward. And the chess engine says, well, it was kind of hard to move those pawns forward anyway. Chess engine says I should just go ahead and grab some more material. That was the recommendation there. Anyway, I went king h6. He gets this check in. I didn't want to just repeat, so I tried going king h5. At least there's no knight checks here. It does have a rook check, but I could keep coming forward and win this pawn. But he went knight back to d6, looking at these guys. So I brought my king to a different square this time, but I've kind of gone around in a big circle with my king. I haven't made any progress, so that's why probably just grabbing the a pawn was the best thing to do there. In fact, that's what happens here after knight c4. I finally go ahead and grab that pawn, but he gets the b pawn in exchange. Let's see. But my king is out of the way. I start pushing the h pawn forward. He played knight c4, and I went king h6, preparing to push the g pawn forward. He went rook to d5, ganging up on my pawn, and the chess engine says I should save that. That's probably the most accurate move here. But I still have a winning advantage after this move with g5. And he took with the knight. His best chance here is his last chance to kind of complicate things and maybe play for a mistake, is to take with the rook. And after the trade, he's got the knight. And, and then I start rolling these pawns forward. And it's bishop versus knight with an extra pawn on this side. It should be a win, but, well, he has some ideas here. If he can defend this square with his knight and start pushing that pawn forward, say knight here and pushing the pawn forward, might cause some difficulty for me. It could at least play on that way. Anyway, after knight takes a5, he's obviously trying to keep all the material on, but this is a pretty straightforward win at this point just by pushing the pawns on the king side. And let's see, and yeah, he can't even stop those. So the chess engine gave this, yeah, and this was a nice trick. He can't stop the pawn even after I give up the exchange here, and it's the simplest way to prevent him from playing here and stopping my pawn from queening or giving up his knight for a pawn. I just give up the exchange and get a queen instead. And of course it's important that I've got this square guarded so his rook can't easily come over and get behind my pawn. So anyway, we play on, but a pretty simple win. And I did win it in kind of a I don't know. It is, I looked at this with the chess engine. This is one of the top moves here because, well, everything wins for black at this point, basically. And this is just one of the winning ideas. And, when you're low on time, going to a 1 king and pawn endgame can be the simplest way to finish it off. And that certainly worked here. And this is a win, so I didn't miscalculate. The only thing I would criticize myself for is I didn't really calculate that before going for it. I just sort of played it instinctively, and in the king and pawn endgame like this, you should really calculate. It's easy enough to see, can the king come over here like this, and can my king block? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I block his king from getting over to this aisle in front of the pawn. So that's probably far enough to calculate to realize that I've got a win at this point. And just knowing that you have your king in front of the pawn on the 6th rank is a win in all cases. A useful bit of knowledge. Can shortcut your calculation in some of these cases. And eventually he resigned at this point. So anyway, kind of a fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a little bit about the Blackmar and the Blackmar-Diemer gambits. And I will see you later. Bye.